I'm now joined by Russian expert and senior fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, Anna Borshchevskaya. Anna, great to have you back on the show. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Anna, let's just start with Russia launched an aerial bombing of a hospital in Ukraine overnight, injuring dozens of people. Why is the Kremlin stepping up attacks on Ukraine, especially in the recent weeks?
The Kremlin is stepping up attacks because for two reasons. One, it remains committed to fighting the war in Ukraine. It's not interested in peace. And as you mentioned earlier, Zelenskyy is headed to the U.S. To meet with Trump on Friday. So Putin is escalating ahead of this meeting. It's a negotiating tactic, essentially, which tells you everything you need to know about what Putin wants. He does not want peace. He wants to control Ukraine. And second, there's been an overall Russian escalation across Europe with NATO in recent weeks. And we've seen that with Poland, with Denmark, with other countries. So again, the big picture, the way to understand what's happening is that one way or the other, no matter how you look at it, Putin is not interested in peace.
Why do you think Vladimir Zelenskyy is going to the US again on Friday? And will he get those much talked about Tomahawk missiles, do you think?
We don't know for certain what he will get, but we've seen a change in tone with President Trump. He has grown more impatient with Putin. He's seen that he put a lot of concessions on Ukraine, and Ukraine was willing to do a lot more towards a potential, at least a ceasefire, but Putin hasn't changed tactics. So we've observed that Trump is visibly frustrated. And Zelenskyy, for his part, does want peace, but peace can't be a capitulation to Russia. Those are two different things. So Zelenskyy remains reliant on the United States and the West at large. And remember, Russia attacked Ukraine. Ukraine is the victim here.
And I just wanted to ask you a little bit, because earlier you said that Putin doesn't want peace, but the Kremlin has actually said it welcomes President Trump's desire to focus on a search for peace in Ukraine after the Gaza ceasefire. We heard this today. Do you think Putin is actually ready to get back to the negotiating table after the Alaska summit resulted in basically not very much at all?
Exactly. Well, first, you're absolutely right. The Alaska summit did not result to very much at all. Of course, we'll have to wait and see. We don't know yet how this particular meeting is going to play out, but what we do know is that traditionally Putin makes these comments. In other words, he pays lip service to the idea of peace. He says he's open to talks, but it's another delay tactic, another opportunity to gain some sort of advantage. And in terms of how Russia fights war, frankly, whether it's Ukraine or Syria or elsewhere, is by resorting to these types of tactics, by signaling that they're interested in peace, but using it to more sinister ends.
So we talk about Russia here, delay tactics when it comes to talks, and they say they'll engage in them, but nothing actually changes. You also mentioned NATO earlier. We've seen incursions into NATO airspace by Russia. Are these European countries doing enough to support Ukraine and to put pressure on Russia? Because when I look at it, the US hasn't put sanctions on Russia. The European Union don't seem to be doing very much either.
Well, there are sanctions on Russia. We could say, though, I could argue there could be a lot more sanctions on Russia. But there are certainly, Russia is the most sanctioned country in the world. The real issue is whether or not that those sanctions have made a difference. And I would argue, in and of themselves, they have not done enough. We could certainly put more sanctions on Russia, but to your point about Europe, Europe could also be doing more. Now, they are stepping up more. They are trying to do more. It's not enough. The question is, what is it going to take? Certainly, incursions into NATO space, violations of NATO airspace that we've seen in recent weeks, that is a big shift. Russia, up until that point, has not tested NATO to the degree that it has. And it certainly raises the question of, what is it going to take? How much is Russia going to escalate? before Europe does more.
Yeah, the big question we're all looking for the answer to. And the war in Ukraine is now in its 4th year. Trump, of course, famously said he could end it in 24 hours. Do you think Donald Trump is the man who can bring peace to this region after we've seen what he's been able to achieve in the Middle East?
Well, certainly, look, American leadership is indispensable. Whether it's Trump or any other American president. The situation in Europe, though, is different than it is in the Middle East. And I don't think anyone realistically expected the war in Ukraine to end in 24 hours. Even Trump himself has shifted away from that talking point. The real question is, what is it going to take to raise the costs on Russia so much so that it can no longer afford to fight? Because that is what it's going to take when Russia can no longer afford to fight, and we're not there yet.
Anna Borshchevskaya, it's great to have you back on the show with me. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.